And we're live. What's going on? Welcome to the Ryan Stick
Hey,
Show. Hey,
hey, Ryan.
Steve. Our reunion is happening, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Stick Show. Today, I have the electric, the amazing Steve Douglas, formerly of Gwar, currently in the Resignators. It is an honor to have you on the show, and it is so nice to see you again, man. How are you?
It's great to see you. It's been, what did we figure,
10
11
years.
years?
Well,
10 years. 10
10
years.
years since we met, and
Yeah.
let's say about 8 years since I've seen you. Let's
Okay.
figure about that. Um, yeah, okay. So just everybody out there in internet land, if you want to hear a funny story, my band, The Real Deal, were on tour and we had just played Japan like the night before. And what happened was, I'm not going to get into the long, treacherous story of our flight and almost not getting there, not having a landing permit, all that stuff. But we get there. We have not slept in over 24 hours, and we get to Australia as the day is beginning. And you guys are about to play the Melbourne Ska Festival. So we go
Right.
to the show and we rock out and stuff like that. We're like, okay, now it's time to go to bed. And I lie on the floor for what I think is about 5 minutes. And as I open my eyes, I am surrounded by people for the after party. Like
I think
there's
you were, I think you were wearing some cute pajamas.
maybe,
I
but
remember that. Yes. Yeah.
the thing is, what's hilarious about that is just like, and everyone's singing and playing guitar, and there was this part of my brain that was like, because I was like about 26 at the time, and there's this part of my brain I'm like, oh, I just want to sleep. I'm like, yeah, but how many times can you ever say in your life that you woke up in a party? First of all, that's awesome. Second, second of all, you're surrounded by all these people who just played the last day of this ska festival, something they've been working on for months. Clearly, this is a pinnacle of excitement. And what's funny is like you were playing guitar and everyone was singing along. And then eventually I got my second win and I started playing guitar. And then everyone
You
else got
did.
too tired to be there, but I wouldn't shut up. And it was absolutely lovely. So
I think it went on all night. I think
yeah.
Dan Potash was there and he fell asleep on the couch, and we started changing all the lyrics to every song to being about Dan. And he would hear his name, he would open one eye, and then he'd go back to sleep. But I'm pretty sure you were in like some cute superhero pajamas.
Maybe.
I have a vague memory of that. And
Very possible, actually. You know what? I rock many superhero pajamas. Everybody out there today, Steve, you have a rich history in which you're still rocking the guitar right now. You're still awesome on stage, but you go all the way back to the beginning days of one of the most notorious, nefarious, theatrical, gross bands ever, Gwar. And it's not that you were guitar player number 6 or you were around to take up the mantle of some of these characters that they have solidified over these years. You were there in the jam space where there's where you guys were kind of like, hey,
yeah.
maybe we should do this. Maybe we should wear costumes. Maybe we should, like, tell me how, what, Gwar, how, why, what?
Well, it really started with a band that Dave Brocky, rest in peace, the real motivator behind Gwar, and the character of Odorous Urungus, who curiously I did get to see before he passed away, because he played Australia, what is it, 5 or 6 years ago. They played Soundwave and got to hang out with him backstage and reminisce and stuff. But he and I had a band called Death Piggy, and it was we called it Silly Core.
I love it.
We did stupid things for every show, like a cat shit, pinata filled with cat shit and money at one show, or one show we dumped all our rubbish out. But it always had to have some element of specialness to the show, some stupid thing. And it was a little hardcore 3-piece, and songs about boners and goats and things like that, and mangoes. But basically, we were always looking for some shtick for the next shtick. That was pun intended, right?
Nice.
For the
Thank you.
next show. And we all rehearsed, all the bands in Richmond. It had a really rich musical scene there, but one of the reasons why is it's cheap to live there and easy to live there.
Okay.
But we had a rehearsal space in an old squat of it was an old milk bottle factory. And that it took up a whole city block. It was run down, falling down, but the pinnacles of each of the four corners were giant milk bottles. It's pretty cool. But you could get a rehearsal space in there for next to nothing, $20 a month or something like that, in an old, industrial space that you'd wall off. But there was a group that was also in that same rehearsal space that were working on an art film, a sci-fi art film called The Scumdogs from Outer Space, and that was Hunter Jackson and Chuck Varga, Don Draculich, a lot of the artists that were going to Virginia Commonwealth University there, and we saw these costumes that they were making and said, "Hey, can we kind of appropriate those for a show?" And ran and wrote a bunch of songs like in an afternoon.
In an afternoon?
Pretty well. The first set was in an afternoon in a cat shit filled basement in this old neighborhood in Richmond called Oregon Hill. And Dave and I had an apartment there. And yeah, most of the first songs we wrote in one day. They weren't exactly classical opuses or anything. They were.
You passed me a link here. I'm gonna
Oh,
as you tell these stories, let's oh, sorry, this is too loud. Shh. Okay, cool. Getting used to the new controls.
Yeah, I think that was our first show actually from PB Kelly's, which was a punk rock venue down in the kind of bottom of Richmond. It ended up that we played there a lot, but we saw some great bands there. Death Piggy played with Butthole Surfers there. Lots of great, I think DOA came, speaking of Canadian bands, just lots of good stuff came down there. And it was pretty crude in the early days. My ball sack was nothing like the Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtle costumes that they have these days and all the animation and all that kind of stuff.
Shout out to Stacy.
Yeah, Stacy's here
just
too.
in the background here.
Yeah. She's letting me witness. Yeah, so
you can see that there.
So that's where my amp blew up, and I had to take off my ball sack thing to be able to see. It took a while. I think the amp blew up because we used real cow's blood in the first show, and some cow's blood got in there before we learned that you don't use real blood in a show. Eventually it started getting made from carrageenan, which was like a seaweed substitute because it was nice and viscous. And there was always a spew factor at each show. But yeah, pretty primitive. Dave was actually not the lead singer in the first one. It was Ben Eubanks, and another time it was Joey Anaruma from Philadelphia. He became the lead singer as we started getting serious. The funny thing about Gwar was Death Piggy was a great band with a great draw, but as soon as we did Gwar once, it totally eclipsed Death Piggy. We couldn't play as a Death Piggy anymore because they wanted to see the costumes. I just saw Greta in the crowd. She was from a great band called Unseen Force and ended up playing with Blondie and Moby and stuff like that.
Dude, how the hell did you see through that mask?
I couldn't. I had to learn how to play. That was before, I think I installed hinges later so I could rock my head like that and it would open up and I could see the neck of my guitar. But that's pretty funny footage. It was filmed by a guy named Michael Moore, who's since passed. He was chronicling a lot of the early Gwar days. And Yeah. I'm watching. And Sean Sumner back on the drums. He's passed now. There's Nick. Hey, Nick. Yeah, nonchalantly cow's blood. Do not use cow's blood in your Canadian rock wrestling. Definitely stick with the virtual blood because it stinks after a week. I
Yeah.
can tell you that.
Just a quick shout out to Nick Caruso and CRW Wrestling, who is
Yes.
responsible for this reunion tonight. Because CRW Wrestling, what they do is they take bands, they take the likeness of bands from, and they put them in a wrestling game, and they make them fight. And
Yes.
Steve is one of those fighters, and so am I. They make them wrestle.
And so is Stace the Ace.
Yeah.
Stace the Ace has put a pretty bad hurting on a few people, although Bree from the Doped Up Dollies kicked her ass. The other, pregnant Bree from the Doped Up Dollies kicked her ass.
Amazing.
I've enjoyed the the Canadian rock wrestling so much. We'll be at work and we'll go, oh, there's a new one, and we just tune out and go into the world of wrestling. It's one of the greatest things, and it's great camaraderie for all of us because we don't get to see each other like we normally do on tours and circuits and stuff like that. So it's we can meet up in the virtual ring and kick some ass, which is great.
Yeah, something about the virtual ring. Nick tells me that you won tonight.
Oh, did I? Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't watched my match yet.
I know, that's the thing. Sometimes, like, I tune in to see if I lose.
Was,
But anyhow,
was that a tag team match, Nick, or was it a random free for all?
no, I'm not sure.
I do a tag team with Frankie Thunder from Down Under, our singer Francis Harrison.
Nice.
He's a big boy, so he's a good one to have in the ring with you.
Dude, he would crush. Francis is a giant teddy bear. He is a very sweet man, but at the same time, he could pick me up and use me as an accordion if you really wanted to.
He's good to have on your side. You don't want to be on the other side.
Absolutely. Sure. We're going to be talking about a lot about the Resignators, your current amazing band that are Australian ska superstars. But we got to answer this question. Well, I got to read this comment first from my buddy Alan LeGros, who is also a giant man. In fact, I would like to see Francis and Alan in the ring sometime, possibly in mud. Gwar is hands down one of the most incredible performances I have ever seen. And to this day, I've never seen anything like it. Walked away covered in God knows what and had the biggest smile I've ever had. Thank you for bringing that into my life. And that's the thing, Steve, is that you were there in Gwar when they were finding out what the hell Gwar was, literally, what to even call it in the acronyms or whatever. So it must be incredibly interesting for you to see that this joke you guys came up with one night has lasted this long. Whether if you're in the band or not. I've had dumb ideas with my friends when drunk, and I'm trying to process 20 years ago the dumb ideas I was coming up with when I was 16 becoming a thing that is bigger than my wildest dreams based on that hunch.
It's a great thing. It's a great thing to see it living on. There's not a soul in the band now that was there when I was there. Yeah. I do know a couple of them better than I know the others. And, I'm really proud of what they do. For me, it's kind of funny because they've become a giant metal band now.
Yeah.
And we started the band to make fun of giant metal bands. But they still make fun of themselves. They still make fun of really anybody. And I guess that was the cool thing about Gwar. Anything that was stupid or, it was fair game. I remember Jella Biafra being, I'm looking at old footage, the props. They've gotten a lot better props these days. And there was one of the first Gwar girls. I think that was Lisa. But nobody was sacred. It could be Democrats or Republicans, anybody that was stupid, any religion. When they came to Australia, Dave said, "What can we do special?" And I said, "Well, don't hurt any native wildlife. How how about you cut off the prime minister's head? And they did that. And it actually made front page news and like, the Sydney Morning Herald and stuff. And some great photos of Tony Abbott was our prime minister then. He was a certified dickhead. And he had giant ears. So it was real easy for them to create a parody of him because they just made a character with giant ears, and everybody knew who it was. And we got to see him chop off his head at was it Soundwave? Yeah, Soundwave. Yeah, and
That's so unique. So, seeing the band when they were in Australia and seeing like the mammoth they became, what was that? What was that like knowing that you
it's
see
pretty
the duct tape?
satisfying. It was pretty
Yeah.
satisfying, and I enjoyed the show. And Dave got Stace and I inside the barricades, and I kind of, knowing the show, I knew when to duck. So I'd like, Stace, get down, and sure enough, the giant cannons of spew would come out and drench them. And it was the greatest thing about it was I got to hang out with Dave, and that was the last time I saw him. He went to Japan after that, went home, and died. So it was great. Like literally our last words. Remember, we started walking away from each other, and we turned around, we ran back to each other and gave big old man hugs. And literally the last words from him were, well, we never know when we'll see each other again. And that came true. So I cried more the day he died than I think anybody other than my mom. So it was a sad day for rock and roll in general. He was a force of nature. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Loved his approach. You know what? You just told me about the first time you ever met Dave Brocky, but sorry, the last time you ever met Dave Brocky. But let's hear about the first time. How does one meet?
First time
Yeah.
I ever met him, I was sitting at the big dining table in a house in Richmond at 1300 Park Avenue, and where I lived with a couple other guys. And I was playing in two other Richmond bands at the time, Mud Helmet, which was a really, really great band, just very Ramones style, I guess you'd say. We toured with the Ramones a little bit. And
Get out.
yeah, and real drunk punk rock band. And
Wait, you got to elaborate on that. How did that go? Because I hear touring with the Ramones is kind of interesting because they kind of like don't
they
talk to
loved us.
anybody.
They actually loved us.
Oh,
I had already met, like years before, like 1979, I played CBGB's the first time with my college band. That night, I met all the Ramones. Billy Idol was in Generation X. All the Dead Boys, Cheetah and Stiv. Joan Jett was there. She was with the Runaways. Debbie Harry, Chris Stein, Talking Heads. Because CBGB's in 1979, that's where everybody went every night. But Dee Dee and I got to be good friends because he asked me if I had anything to smoke, and I did. And we went outside, and we got to be good friends. So I think we were one of the only bands ever to play open for the Ramones that were allowed to do an encore. And because that was one of their stipulations, opening bands never did encores. And we played with them in, where was it? The Bayou in Washington, D.C. It's kind of big warehouse kind of club down on the Potomac River in D.C. And we finished, and we were going to pack it in like they said in the contract. And the guys were standing on the side of the stage, and they went, no, go ahead, do another one. And we did. And they were great guys. They were really, you couldn't ask for a nicer guy than Joey Ramone. Every single show I ever played in New York, I think he showed up. And literally the last time I played there, he helped us load out, after he's already a big star. But he's like, hey, can I grab that for you? I was like, sure. Trust you to carry my guitars, And he was just such a, pleasant person. Dee Dee had his demons and stuff. And I didn't know the others as well.
Mm,
And but Joey was just, whenever you saw him, he's just as friendly as can be, and another great loss for rock and roll, of course. You
absolutely.
know, he would still be going if he was alive today. I have no doubt. Yeah, he wouldn't have stopped. Um,
I think
yeah.
it's such.
So anyway,
I think
we
it's
had
such
this
a
band
shame, Steve.
Mud Helmet,
Yeah.
and Dave had seen me play with that, and I had another band I was in called the Snake Handlers. It was more like spooky cramps, gun club, Southern Gothic kind of stuff. But Russ was in Death Piggy,
Okay.
and he was the original guitar player in that band, and he was moving away or had enough of it, and leaving on good terms. And Dave came and asked me if I would become the guitarist for Death Piggy, and Death Piggy was one of the better drawing bands in Richmond at that time. I said absolutely, and I had to go sit with Russ and learn all the songs. He taught me all the songs because there was some weird stuff in there, chords I'd never played, like not even chords, just noise and
Okay.
stuff. It's kind of outside the box kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's how I ended up in Death Piggy, which of course led to Gwar. Yeah,
Wow. You're
yeah.
me- you're mentioning before about how Joey Ramone was still alive, he'd still be going. It's such a shame that within a year or two of Joey's death, the Ramones start getting all this serious mainstream recognition, like getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Dee Dee died a day or two after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
I didn't even
induction.
realize that. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such a shame because that would have meant everything to Joey. Because Joey kind of always, from what I've read in Monty's book, he always thought, yeah, the next record's going to be the big one. It's going to be the one that's going to make us get there. And, you
Yeah.
know,
And when they started, they didn't anticipate being a punk rock band. They wanted to be Led Zeppelin.
yeah.
They wanted to be rock.
Hmm.
And it just turned out that the way they played and the way they dressed happened to become punk rock.
Yeah.
And yeah, they he would have been pretty happy with that, I'm sure. And like I said, he was a really kind of a humble guy, so
Mm.
some that kind of recognition would have been pretty fulfilling for him, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, enough about the Ramones. Let's get on to you, Steve. The Ramones didn't think they were going to be a punk band, but what did you think when you picked up that guitar for the first time? Like, what kind of music did
Punk
you idolize?
when I picked up the guitar for the first time, punk wasn't even on the horizon yet. It was like, it was stuff like Hendrix and Zeppelin, The Who. I always loved Pete Townsend, all that classic rock kind of stuff. That's where I, first got my chops. My first band, I was 16, I think, and it was in the Bahamas. That's not counting a fifth grade band where we
Where
played.
haven't you lived?
Haven't lived anywhere terribly cold like Montreal. Oh, I did live in Pittsburgh for 3 years, and that's where I started my first band in
Okay.
fifth grade. I was playing clarinet in
Yeah.
fifth grade, and the orthodontist told my mom that if I played clarinet, my teeth would end up buck teeth, and so I had to give it up. So, and I was really enjoying it. So she said, "Well, why don't you get another instrument?" And I said, and the Beatles had just happened. Well, were happening, I guess, right about that time, is like Rubber Soul. And I said, "Oh, I want a guitar." And so I went
Mm.
down and went to Sears and got a silver tone acoustic guitar. The action so hard that an F chord took 3 years to learn how to play, that kind of thing. Um, and I started a little band with my two best mates, and it was two acoustic guitars, and the drummer played cardboard boxes, you know. And we did Miss Arnold's fifth grade class party, end of year party, and we played Please Please Me, Love Me Do. I think we tried to play Sounds of Silence, but it was too hard.
Oh, yeah.
Red Rubber Ball by the Circle.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of that early kind of, um, pre-psychedelic rock, but really what I sunk my teeth into was psychedelic rock. Like in the Bahamas, we had a little band with drummer that lived on my street, Johnny Brown, and Damian Farmer played bass, and we called it acid, even though none of us had ever taken acid before. Not that we ever might in the future. And we did like Hendrix, Creed's Clearwater Revival,
Awesome.
you know, that
Good
kind
time
of
of
stuff.
music.
Yeah. Punk rock didn't happen until I was just in my last years of university at William and Mary. And I started listening to, you know, Sex Pistols came along, the Ramones came out. I guess any punk rock I had before that was, and what really did have a huge effect on me was Iggy. I mean, Iggy was punk before punk. And, you know, I remember getting Cream magazine, which was like the rock magazine back in the day. They talked about, you know, all the big classic rock bands, The Who and Zeppelin and things like that. But they always had a love for Iggy, and he made a lot of the covers. And so I did listen to Iggy before punk rock even came along. But as it started hitting, you know, more of a mainstream kind of, you know, thing with the Talking Heads and Blondie and stuff like that, I embraced it wholeheartedly, because at that point we were all kind of, it really happened because we were sick of major labels, you know. And there was, back then there was, like when I shopped my first record I did, first recording, there was probably 6 major labels. You had to make appointments, get past the secretary, drop off a demo, and you never heard from them again, because there were 6 major labels for all the bands in the world. And it really started breaking when, like, you know, the independents like Sire Records and Rolling Stones Records, which they had major distro, but the punk rock labels started happening. And that allowed bands to start doing what they're doing now. Of course, it's so easy to self-publish. You know, any kid can get, you know, a nice recording software on their computer, and if they learn how to use it, and you know, you can do better at home with Logic or Pro Tools or Studio One, then that's, you know, 100 times what George Martin had with the Beatles. You know, I had to do, you know, 4 tracks of what's a challenge. So, you know, the playing field's leveled, and that's a great thing. If a kid has a song in his head, you know, you can get it out. You know, Billie Eilish and her brother, you know.
I was going to bring up Billie Eilish. I saw this documentary. It was so cool. Her brother and they've recorded that album, that multi-platinum monster album, in a bedroom.
In his bedroom. I watched that too.
And, so cool.
And, you know, they did that in Logic, which is what I work into. And the new Logic Pro has all the raw files for that as a bonus. So Stace and I were going through it, like going, oh, look how she brought in that vocal here. And oh, they flipped that backwards. And oh, look at the plugins. And they use like stock plugins too, Logic plugins. Oh, look, they did a little compression here and doubled the harmony. There's a lot of harmony vocal tracks, but it's basically pretty simple. You know, the arrangement of the song. It has some complicated flourishes, but it was interesting breaking it down. Yeah, so that's what can be done now, and that's a great thing. You know, we'll get on and talk about the Resignators in a minute, but the Resignators new 7-inch Bluebird tattoo. We'll come back to it, but this one.
Show that beautiful piece. Oh, that's awesome. Wait, let's get a shot of that record. Let's get a shot of that record though.
Here.
Let's see that beautiful translucent. That is awesome.
Yeah. That was pressed in Zenith's record pressing in Melbourne, which is a nice place. but because of COVID lockdown, we couldn't really get together and rehearse. We couldn't, do much. So basically, I would get the guys by here one by one, literally right here, with this microphone and these effects, and lay tracks, and we recorded it here and put it out. And to be honest, it sounds as good as stuff that we spent thousands of dollars on in major studios. So we're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, man.
I was able to, because of the state of the art now, like we recorded our last record in Sing Sing, a wonderful studio where Living In and Nick Cave and people like that recorded in Melbourne on a Neve desk and an SSL desk, and the best kind of quality in the world. But I wanted to get that drum sound, and I actually found drum samples that were taken from Sing Sing with their mics, with their room, with their everything, their processing, so I could get that exact kick and that exact snare without having to even leave the house. So that was cool. Yeah.
Amazing, man. Yeah, that's something about the technology catching up too. Video wise, it's a lot that too. You'll see people on YouTube making things up blow my mind, and it's because the technology is so accessible right now.
Yeah, and computers have gotten faster, so you can do more.
In the last 10 years alone. In the last 10 years alone, or even 15 years ago, it's almost like going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. I find when it comes to the
very, very true.
Yeah, well, with the advent of YouTube as well, being able to kind of like be a teacher for topics that you would want, particularly like let's say you're good at everything, but you don't know how to do this part. You can actually just look up how to do that part, as opposed to this large blanket of knowledge that you have to ingest if you signed up for.
It used to be you'd have to go to a library and scan through the card files and look for stuff. But literally, our toilet broke a couple of months ago, and I plugged in our toilet brand on YouTube and how to replace a gasket, and it came up and it showed me exactly how to. Or what was the other one? We couldn't get the seats out of our Mercedes van because we were moving a bunch of stuff and we needed to take seats out, and we tried everything. We couldn't do it. And I went, oh, YouTube. And I went, Mercedes van, seat removal. Plum, plum. It was that easy. So that is a wonderful thing. The knowledge that's out there, and the accessibility of music. I mean, with I know it really sucks that Spotify doesn't pay artists and stuff, but artists weren't getting paid ever since the MP3 got invented. So
which is a 20-year-old problem now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
I was working in Richmond's biggest record store, with a great record store called Plan 9 Records, independent record store with 5 stores in Virginia, but the flagship store was huge, and he was doing really well. And you could any punk rock or any hard to find stuff you could get there, good prices. And I remember reading a news article about MP3 and being invented as a musical storage medium. And I walked down to my boss's office and said, we're screwed. And he said, how do you figure? And I said, music's just going to be free. There's no way to keep the genie in the bottle. And sure enough, I mean, they're still alive, but Plan 9 Records is now 1/10 the size that it used to be. It is promising that there's a resurgence in vinyl, which is nice.
Yeah.
Vinyl outsold CDs for the first time in the last year. CDs are, of course,
for sure.
They're getting to be a kind of a, still a great storage medium, but But why, when you've got cloud storage,
Exactly. Why would you buy a CD if you could just get digitally? Well, you can't you can't download a vinyl. You can't download the quality of vinyl and the physical experience. I mean, my buddy
Yeah.
Jason Rockman, he's a big vinyl collector to this day, and he supports musical artists all the time. But every piece of music he wants it on vinyl. So he went straight back. He went straight back to the future and went to the source, and it's kind of what everyone is clamoring for. But
Yeah.
you remember when, everyone listened to vinyl and then tapes came out and CDs. I mean,
Yep.
you've
Oh, without a
seen the
doubt.
world change
Without a
so
doubt.
many
I used
times.
to have a collection of, I don't know, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 LPs and tons of 7 inches. I had to sell it all before I moved here because transporting 3,000 pieces of vinyl to Australia would probably cost thousands and thousands of dollars. But we still buy vinyl, and just that was a great one. Just last month for Christmas, we got the Agrolites special box set.
Oh yeah.
It had every single Agrolites released in a box set from Pirates Press, and we've been spinning that one a lot. And the Agrolites are a band that sounds even better on vinyl because of that warmth and stuff. That dirty reggae
Yeah.
warmth. Ding,
Oh yeah.
Agrolites. Yeah. And that's why it was good to get that one on vinyl too.
Well, especially
And
considering you recorded in your house. I mean, that must be something amazing when you look at the process of making something that turns out great. But sometimes when I'm working on something, I can't not see it in like little pieces. It's hard to admire how the assembly of it. But this video I made for a friend of mine, they do these rock covers, and they're called the Kings of Quarantine. They have these different variety of musicians and rock stars come and do these covers. And my friend showed me a clip of it. It was on the news, and only when it was on television did something I make all of a sudden and I couldn't see the thing I could change or edit or tweak. When it was
right.
there, it was this finished thing on this in this untouchable medium that is television that I've never touched upon. I understand YouTube and how to get there, but television, whoa, that's that big thing my whole life that, seems so unattainable. So as you hold that vinyl in your hand of this thing you recorded in your house, does it make it seem so much more real?
Oh, it does. Absolutely. And it's palpable. And, you know, this little 7 inch, I could bring up the file here, but it's like 45 tracks, and, counting all the drum tracks and the room mics. And Stace knows because she went through the hell of it. Because I had time, I spent about, I think, 80 hours mixing it. And,
Whoa,
you know,
80
and I
hours.
would, and I would, well, we had the time, there's quarantine stuff. And I would sit down, we'd watch a Netflix show, and I'd play it again. I'd go, I think I could, slightly change the hi-hats in that section, and just kept tweaking and tweaking it. But once you say it's done, it's like a painting. When's a painting done, or editing a video? But once I sent this off, by the way, this was mastered by Ronan Chris Murphy out in LA, who was an old Gwar. He had a studio and a rehearsal space in that same milk bottle factory that we were talking
Nice.
about earlier.
Full
And
circle, dude.
since then, he's gone on to be, well, he did the last Gwar album, which is great, but he produced that and engineered all that. But he also has been the engineer and the mastering engineer on the last 10 King Crimson things. So he's doing all this wild stuff with all these prog rock bands too. He's doing a record himself right now, and Tony Levin's playing bass on it and Terry Bozzio from Missing Persons playing the drums, and Zappa. So it was good to have. Once I did all that, and I sent it to him, and I said, "What do you think? Is this good?" And he said, "Yeah, And so it was good to have that confirmation. And he mastered it for us, and he did a specific vinyl mastering, because the vinyl mastering process is
I know,
just
it's really
like,
different.
yeah.
A lot more bottom end in vinyl mastering, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful not to overdo it down in that 60 to 80 kind of frequency, because you don't want your needle bouncing too much. So,
Yeah.
but they did a wonderful.
Speaking of your record, Steve, why not, as we talk, I play the music video that the Resignators just came out with, this single that we're pushing, so people can actually hear your work.
Okay, do that. And this video was because we couldn't get together and film a live video, or COVID quarantine. I outsourced this to Russians. A guy named Alex Dar. And I've seen some of his work, and I trusted the vision. And he did exactly what we were looking for. He did top motion. There you go.
Sounds cool, buddy.
So this one tells the story of an old Melbourne music and fashion movement back in the 70s that was exclusive to Melbourne. They were called the Sharpies.
Yeah.
And they all dressed the same way, had the same haircut, and listened to the same music. And it was one of those, it was rare. It was unique only to Australia and Melbourne. And they all got bluebird tattoos.
How on earth does one record like horn sections? I don't know, man. That's something I don't understand unless it's a plugin.
In this case, I had to bring them in one by one. So I wrote out the horns like in MIDI and Logic, and then I would bring Jeremy, our trumpet player, and Dan, our trombone player, and Stacy played tenor and tenor sax, and I bring them by, and Logic has a score feature where I could just pull up the cards and give them the sheet music, and I think it has about 9 horn tracks on it. 4 trumpets, 2 trombones, 3 saxes, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so this song tells a love story of Peter and Shelley, who were Sharpies.
Dude, the animation really reminds me of Monty Python. It's really cool. Yeah.
The stop motion.
Yeah.
And the bluebird art was done by a local girl who was out of work and needed to pay rent, so I got her to do the bluebird tattoo for us, and that got incorporated. That one right there. Yeah.
Everybody out there, if you want to hear the song at full volume without a bunch of titles and everything, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you watch and subscribe to the Resignators on YouTube, because they're a great band, been together a very long time. In fact, Steve, dare I say, 10 years ago when we first met, were you the new kid back then on the block?
Yeah, I had just joined, and Stacy 2 months before that. Yeah.
Wow.
That was one of our that Ska Nation was one of our first shows, and Chris Solaris, who played or however you pronounce his Greek name, who had played guitar before. Yeah. He was at that party that you woke up at as well. In fact, I think he showed me how to play the Boss Stones impression that night. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I remember hearing. Actually, that might be the moment I woke up.
That might have been
when you're all singing "Knock on Wood." The impression I get, like, "I'll never knock on wood," because I remember particularly listening to that and being like, "Oh crap, Boss Stones, right?" And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, just because it's Australia doesn't mean they're not familiar with all the same ska bands and music." And it's just amazing how music can just reach its way across the world, and you could be high-fiving strangers that you don't even know yet. And then, yeah. There's no reason why I used to wear band t-shirts, man, before YouTube and all that kind of stuff, because it was like putting a feeler out there to be like, who's going to be my new friend tonight? No effects, huh? No effects, no effects. You. Okay, friend.
Yep, that's great. And the whole touring thing, that's what we all miss the most. I mean, you know, the Resignators, Australia's a weird country, you know, for touring locally, you know, how far it is from Melbourne to Cairns, or even Melbourne to Brisbane, or even Melbourne to Sydney. We don't have, I guess Canada, the middle of Canada is kind of like that. You know,
Yeah.
we've done the long drives there. But we love to get overseas and tour. And, you know, Canada's always been, we've been on more Canadian tours than anywhere else. Yeah. I think, what have we done in the last 10 years? I think Stacy and I have done 10 Canadian tours with the Resignators. Yeah.
Wow.
And they've been some of the best. Sometimes we only did West Coast. Sometimes we only did the Montreal end, but usually we went
It's
all
hard
the
to
way
connect the
across.
two. It's a brutal long drive. If you're doing
Yeah,
Montreal and Toronto or the West Coast, like you need to stay. We need a week.
Yeah,
We need like
yeah.
5 straight days to get from one part of the country to the other. No
I
stopping.
remember, I think our longest drive.
That was from Thunder Bay.
No, our longest drive was we played Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And that year we had gotten on the Ottawa Blues Fest, which is
That's a
awesome.
long drive. Yeah.
And we had to drive straight through and be there in time for an afternoon show. And we did 44 hours straight through. And we made it in time. And that was, fortunately, we played early, because that was the year that after we played, Cheap Trick went on and the entire stage blew over. And they had to shut down the whole festival. So it was good we played early.
So you blew them off the stage, did you?
Okay. Yeah, it came down that river in Ottawa, and I remember just like this freak sheer wind out of nowhere blew over a city block size stage, and like boom. And Bunny Carlos was sitting, they had just finished their set, but Bunny Carlos was still up there and on the drums, and it just fell around him. You know, he was left safe. Nobody got hurt. I don't know how that happened, but they did shut it down. But yeah, we love to tour, and we really miss that. Our last overseas tour was at Japan. Yeah, it was Japan, where we got hooked on the little Japanese coffees.
In the little Japanese coffees that are in like the vending machines
everywhere.
I love that. I got to go back to Japan not last year, 2 years ago. Feels like last year though. The last year just felt like Groundhog Day. And 2 years ago, and it's just amazing to be able to. And I haven't been back to Australia yet, but I'm like, I really was glad to go back to Japan and just not be drunk all the time, because the first time you go there with the jet lag and the band and the shows and the hospitality, that's kind of what you do. But the second time I was just with my family and just really got to take it all in. Like, have you guys been to Akihabara in Japan?
Is that the
Electric City with all the
electronic shop city?
Yeah,
yeah, we've been through there. Well, Stace and I were lucky. Right before the Resignator, we joined the Resignator. So 12 years ago, we got a job playing music. This was a really weird one. Playing bluegrass with me on acoustic guitar and her on fiddle, and we had a banjo player with us on a Mark Twain style riverboat, a paddle wheel riverboat, on the most sacred and largest lake in Japan called Lake Biwako, right outside Kyoto. And we worked there 6 months, playing 4 shows a day, 6 days a week. We never had the same day off. So Monday I had to cover, and Tuesday Stace had to cover, and literally never had a day off in 6 months. But it's a great way to work your chops up. You're playing every day. And in 6 months' time, we started getting pretty good with the Japanese, and we went back a second year and did it again and got even better. The third year, pretty well got fluent in Japanese. And I never thought that would happen. But when we went with the Resignators, we're hanging out with some Japanese ska bands there. What's the band? Not 7 Seconds. Seven. My friend Hiroki. But anyway, we went to a huge ska show in Osaka on our day off, which had all the Japanese biggest ska bands. And I was able to sit in the big conversations and know what they were saying and actually communicate with them. But we love Japanese culture, Japanese food, Japanese whiskey.
Oh yeah, whiskey.
We
Yeah.
were pretty well behaved.
The affordable Japanese whiskey. Yes.
The Resignators always do the show, and then we find the whiskey. So we were good in that regards. But in Osaka, Jeremy, our trumpet player, and he's a whiskey fan, and we found a little what's considered the best whiskey bar in Osaka, literally as big as our lounge room here, and you had to duck really low to get into the little half door and walk in. And
is that like the block with a bunch of tiny little bars where
yeah,
fit like 5 people? Oh my God!
Exactly. We took about 5 of us, and we filled the bar. And the bartender was missing a few fingers, which I guess he was ex-Yakuza, but he was a little old man with a bow tie. And yeah, he served us some really, really good whiskeys, and we had a good time. We would love to get back over there and do that again, because it's fairly easy from Australia. It's not as bad as trying to fly to Montreal, where it takes us a day and a half to get there.
Absolutely.
But we had a Canadian tour set up. Stomp had set up for us. That would have been April of last year, but of course that fell apart. We were going to do a bunch of shows with Creep Show and what's the girl band, Ollie's girlfriend plays in now. This a kind of new girl punk band over there.
Yeah. Oh, the Anti-Queens probably.
Anti-Queens.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome.
So
everybody out there, look up the Anti-Queens. Their song "Worse Than Death" is like the coolest fucking song.
And she wrestles as well. Yeah.
Which one?
One of the singers, guitar players.
Oh, Val.
Val
wrestles.
Valerie Knox.
Yeah.
Valerie Knox wrestles. Oh, it's CRW. I thought you meant actually. Okay.
Come on, it's real, isn't it?
Yeah. No. Sorry, I thought you meant like in the WWF. Like, all right. That's true.
The other major league, the CRW league,
the better wrestling league, CRW. Everybody out there, do not be shy to ask Steve some questions, and we do have a question all the way from before, but I'm selfish. I want Steve all to myself.
Yep.
All right, question. What question? Out of all the tours, what was the most shocking tour? Shockingly good or bad? Your choice. And that is by our buddy Nick Caruso of CRW.
Most shocking. I think the most shocking thing that ever had happened. This isn't a family show, is it? No.
Fuck no.
Okay, that's that. When I was in Gwar still, and we were just getting our first big shows, we played the Limelight in New York in an old like Gothic church kind of thing, turned into a venue. And I remember Peter Steele from Typo Negative was there, and I met him that night. I remember shaking his hand. His hands, I have big hands. His hands were twice as big as mine. But I was playing a solo that night, and I kneeled down on the front of the stage. There was no barriers or barricades. And a girl slipped my dick out and stuck it in her mouth. I don't think I'll ever top that one.
And were you wearing the mask and everything too?
I was wearing a tiny little, G-string furry skull loincloth. Oh, you saw the picture. It's in that picture I sent you. And she just reached
There we
under
go.
the magnet. And who was I to stop a fan from getting what she wanted? You know.
I know,
So,
but just for you to have the mask on too, I would be like, if I felt my dick going in a mouth while my eyes are kind of restrained, I would just be like,
I could
yeah,
see she was a really cute. I met her afterwards. She was a really cute stewardess on
okay,
layover, there. Yeah, I knew where it was going. And I didn't have, I was in the moment. I couldn't stop it. So I guess that's the most shocking. You know, there was other times like one time I was driving the Gwar bus after a North Carolina show. We had an old yellow school bus, international
naturally.
school bus. And basically it had like, enough seats, but then the back was all just mattresses. I called it the pee pit because it stank really bad. So to avoid the back of the bus, I always said, I'll drive, and I would do the driving. And it was the middle of the night in North Carolina, which is not the most progressive of states. And we got pulled over by a policeman. And I remember like there was beer cans rolling all around I wasn't drunk. I was sober, rolling all around the van. And I thought, how the hell am I going to get out of this one? And I was still covered with blood and stuff.
Okay,
I
yeah.
didn't have my costume on, but I still, scraggly, sweaty. And I
The point is,
somehow,
you're driving a kid's school bus while drenched in blood, and there's beer cans everywhere. So
yeah,
someone's
that's what
got
I'm
some
getting at.
explaining to
I knew
do.
I had to rise to the occasion, so I think I did like my Star Wars voice on him, and these are not the droids you're looking for. But I actually told the cop that we were a Christian band and that we were traveling around showing the evil in mankind, which is not far from the truth, showing the evil in mankind. But I told him we were a Christian band, and somehow I talked my way out of that one. And we went on down the road. I'm not sure how. Another show in North Carolina, Dave got arrested for obscenity, and the promoter. And in a show in Richmond, Dave got arrested for obscenity. Basically, there was an early period before Gwar was accepted when things weren't as accepted. Like the first UK tour got canceled because the UK banned Gwar. And even though Beavis and Butthead thought we were cool,
Okay,
yeah.
that
So
was
I
a
guess
big
that's
that
the
was a
most
big deal,
shocking.
right? That Beavis and
Yeah,
Butthead thought you were cool. That was like a huge thing, right?
that was a huge thing. And then in their video game, which was like Nintendo 8-bit kind of stuff, you had to find a Gwar ticket, both pieces of it, and put them together. I never played it, but Beavis and Butthead didn't like everybody. They liked AC/DC and Gwar, and that was an honor, without a doubt. Resignators tours, we've had disasters, and we always get over them. Sometimes they're harder than others. Getting stopped at the border, trying to get back into the U.S. after Montreal's show. That was several tours ago. Yeah. We had a fascist. The lady recognizes us, and because we've been through that border crossing, that one coming into the U.S. from Montreal, and she kicked. It was Francis was flying out of Montreal, so that was okay, to Europe to keep going on our tour.
Yeah.
But Stacy, Jeremy, Lita, and John were turned away at the border. They couldn't turn me away because I'm American. So I had to drive them back into Montreal. This is like, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And then turn around and drive the truck, the U-Haul truck I'd rented, and all the equipment down to Richmond, Virginia, to return the gear and book flights for those guys out of there to Paris. And that was a huge disaster. There there's been tons of vehicle disasters, you know. The Planet Smashers smashing into, I call them the van smashers, smashing into our van in Quebec City. And I think that was the biggest blizzard you guys had in like decades. It was like, you know, a couple of meters of snow.
Probably.
And
What year was that?
that would have been about 6 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude. You know what?
Remember that big blizzard?
I think I remember that year actually because a colleague of mine who came to my house so we could have a meeting ended up having to sleep on my sofa because he couldn't get home.
Right.
In fact, I remember that vividly. It was
So
actually me and him
we were
bonded.
in Quebec City
Yeah.
and literally there was already a meter and it was still like whiteout snowing, you know. And you know, here's this guy who grew up in the Bahamas, myself, driving beautifully in the snow, no problems whatsoever. And old Matt Collier from the Planet Smashers said, I can drive in the snow, and slammed into our van and smashed my driver's side window out. So I had to drive after the show that night. I had to drive from Quebec City to Montreal
with a bit of cardboard in the window.
I know what cardboard, it was like a rubbish bag taped over, going flap, 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 flap. That blew off, and I had, you know,
Oh no.
I had every layer of clothing on, just my eyes showing, trying to drive, and I could literally see like maybe 5 meters in front of us, if that much. And I remember Jono in the back seat of the van saying, it's been nice knowing you guys. This is the day we all die. And I would be driving along and I would see red lights in front of me. And all of a sudden I'd see them spin out and go into a gully. And I'd have to pick another car to follow. And somehow we made it on that trip. You know, I don't know. We made it to Montreal safe and sound. We were staying in that hotel that we always, our hostel, an Indian guy used to run. I think it's closed now.
Yeah.
At the corner of, I can't remember the streets. Francis would know, but it was on a pretty good incline.
Yeah.
And we would sit on the steps. Literally, every person that walked by slipped and fell. So, as a person came, they slip and fall. Get up. Next person slip and fall.
That happened on the Muppets. There's an icy patch in the Muppet Family Christmas in the front door. So, like, as you see Kermit and everyone running around every second, like Muppet would go, ah!
That's what it was. It was exactly like that.
Oh my God.
So I guess that answers Nick's question, though, the most shocking, because I don't think that'll ever happen to me again. Yeah, you never know.
Now, especially during COVID time, I couldn't imagine anybody walking up to a stranger and putting their penis in their mouth.
That's true. That's
in a time when we got to wash our hands 3 times and keep a social distance.
Yeah.
Long are the days.
Yeah.
Long are the days of random penis interaction.
Yeah, we don't even shake hands or hug anymore.
No. It'd be kind of interesting if you just skipped like first and second and just went straight home instead of first base. Anyhow, so Steve, I gotta ask you. You're in this band. You guys started kind of as a joke. When does like you said quickly, Piggy got eclipsed by everyone wanting to see Gwar, and you started having these big shows and you're meeting Typo Negative, all this stuff. At one point did you say, hey, I think I've done enough in Gwar and I kind of want to move on? How does one decide to do that?
Well, it was kind of just had enough. You know, it wasn't just fun anymore. It started becoming more what I was kind of making fun of when we started it. And you know, no offense to those guys, they did what they did and went on. But also, I had babies and I had 2 daughters, and it just it didn't suit me at the time anymore. And there was a couple, to be honest, there's a couple of guys, and not Dave by any means. We're always blood brothers. There's a couple of guys in there, and I won't name them just to be nice.
Okay.
That I didn't get along with. and at all. And some of them I have great, the guys. Nobody's left in there from those days anymore. But yeah, there was people that kind of soured my taste with the band, and it was a lot of work back then. To be honest, Dave and I did all the work musically in that band. There was guys doing work with the art, but yeah, and I just moved on to other things. I've always liked to do other things. I'm really happy with the Resignators because ska is what I learned to play when I was, 16. When we moved to the Bahamas, I started taking lessons with these two old black Bahamian women, the Camler sisters. And, I went over and paid them 50 cents and they said, okay, you go like this. And they taught me the backbeat, and that was, calypso and reggae and ska was all we heard on the radio there. Prince Buster, and it was 60s when I moved down there, mid 60s. So, they were playing, Simmer Down, and that was my mainstream radio that I grew up with. So to be able to find a band like the Resignators that takes some of that and combines it with the punk rock that I love, and the big horns. I just love playing with horns. It just makes me happy. And Stacy playing the keys in there, it suits me now, and I definitely have a lot more fun in that band. It's a fun band,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Say something about you mentioned you and Dave did all the work when writing music in Gwar. That's interesting. You were mentioning, I remember you telling me once upon a time that you were like you wrote a lot of the songs in the beginning and stuff like that.
Yeah, pretty much most of the first album. Dave wrote almost all the lyrics.
Of course, but you still need a guitar sound for Gwar to make any sense.
And he came from a bass playing background, so
Yeah.
that first album, he would, I'd just go, how about, and okay, we'll go to the D, stuff like that, and it was written pretty quickly.
Songs you would write in an afternoon.
Yeah, it was. And then as we started getting the songs together for the first album that we recorded up in New York with Kramer from Bongwater, and he'd done a lot of kind of art rock stuff, because that was what it was, art rock, I guess you'd call it. Today it's metal,
Today it's fart rock.
Yeah. Actually, I saw a flyer just the other day from our record release party for the first Gwar album with Bongwater. They came down to our hometown in Richmond, and David done on the flyer, he drew a guy farting minus F equals question mark. So fart minus F equals art,
Yes.
Yeah, and that was Dave's sense of humor. Yeah. So, I think I was the only member of Gwar that had a job back then. So I had to pay for the master tapes, and I had to pay for with everybody's bologna sandwiches at a road stop, gas for petrol for the bus. Not that it was a lot of money that we were spending back then, but it was a little more work than I felt like doing at that point. And you only do things as long as they're fun. If you keep doing them after they're fun, then it's kind of useless. So yeah. But well, I still love watching them see what they do today, 40 years on, with the costumes bigger than life. I think it's still fun. Without Dave in there writing lyrics, it'll never be the same. You know, there's kind of two schools of thought now amongst the Gwar fans that, you know, Brocky's gone, Gwar's dead, or no, Gwar lives on because it's bigger than any individual. So,
Well,
I know.
I did see a tour after Dave died, the tour that they did, and
Yeah.
actually, as heartbreaking as this is to admit, I have never seen Gwar with Dave. In
Oh
fact,
well.
I kind of got my shit together and saw the
Yeah.
post Dave tour because I said, well, this is probably the last time I'll see any kind of Gwar, and this
Yeah.
seems to be a tribute to the gentleman. So
Yeah.
I
And
should jump on that.
and they did a bit of that, and they're still doing like they're still playing songs in the set. You know that I wrote for the first album. You know, so that's kind of cool that there's still old songs. And at this point, I don't know how many albums they put out, like 10 or something like that. But maybe more than that, maybe a dozen. The fact that they're still playing old songs and the fans want to hear those is kind of satisfying. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
something I got to give full credit to my buddy Marco Vaccaro. I went to high school with him. He was like that cool kid. Like, you know, like everybody in every high school, they have that guy that knows the bands that, you know, it's like, guys, you got to hear this band. And all
Oh,
of a
yeah.
sudden, you all like the bands, but you need that one, like, effortless Fonzie type character. He was
Yes.
definitely that guy. And he was rocking Gwar shirts forever and had seen them multiple times. And he'd walk out of Club Soda, same venue I saw you guys with Resignators at when you played my
Yeah.
hometown. And Gwar played there all the time. And everybody who would get out of there would go into the Metro completely covered in red fake blood. And the Metros would just look like a murder scene afterwards.
I remember when we played Club Soda that time and every other time that we've been in Montreal, we always go to Foof's across the
Buffoons.
street there. And
Yeah.
there's a table and they have all the bands, you know, posters laid into the tables there. And I remember there is a Gwar table. Remember we were sitting there? Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, well, that's a great thing. I think it was the fact that Deanna at one of my favorite clubs in Toronto, the Bovine Sex Club. She was a Gwar fan, and that kind of introduced us to each other and stuff, and helped get the Resignators in there. So, you know, it's a cool thing. I'll never forget it. You know, never forget that show at the Limelight. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's just it's fascinating to, like I said, to wake up in a party, and I'm trying to fathom that in a post-COVID world where I would be asleep and I'd wake up and be surrounded by 20 people having the time of their lives. And now it's not going to happen again for a very long time, especially considering I usually throw said parties that, you know, someone would in theory wake up in. But I just remember the joy, like clearly the vibe between you and Resonators, like you're all like friends. You know, you're a band,
Oh
but you're
yeah,
all friends,
we
like
have,
a
you
family.
know,
Like,
there's always strife and stuff on tour, but we always try and just suck it up and get over it, you know, and move on. And when we're on stage, there's absolutely no doubt every single one of us, and I think that shows with the Resignators. Every single one of us is having the time of their life, and that spills over to, you know, to the punters. Do you call them punters? And that's what they call the crowd down here, punters. Um,
no, we don't.
okay,
But I
to the
will
crowd,
now.
to the
But I will
fans.
now.
Yeah, it's a good word, punters. It goes back to like football and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, we have
I,
we have a question from my HQ.
yep.
Actually have a producer tonight, and it's awesome. Who just took over, and now I don't have to go through everything. It's amazing. What would a movie? What? Oh, sorry. What movie? Wait. I apologize. I'm going to read this again. What would be a movie you would love to have a song on?
Like a movie that's been out already, obviously.
Sure.
Maybe Clockwork Orange. That's a nice one. Newer movies. What have we watched lately that we
Yeah,
love?
I can picture the song "Fucking an Animal," like during the
Yeah.
during the time when it was strapped down, looking at the screen. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
Clockwork Orange had that violence in it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm studying Russian right now because I love to study languages, and I realized like I already know a bunch of words from because they use so many Russian words in Clockwork Orange, Moloko and Druga and stuff like that. Yeah, Russian's a challenge, but I'm deep into it. It's going to happen.
I find all
If I can
find
learn Japanese, I can learn Russian.
nice. I find all languages a challenge, including English. Yeah.
For some reason, I just love them. I mean, I'm pretty good with my French, our Francophone Montreal friends. I can get by pretty well.
And Spanish too.
And Spanish. When we went to Mexico with, well, we were supposed to go with Los Kung Fu Monkeys, and then they got on the Boston's tour, so we went by ourselves. But I was able to be pretty fluent in Spanish as well. Yeah, Russian's another step. I'm not sure we'll ever tour Russia. We'll see. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people tour Russia, to be honest, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm being told by my producer to bring up the fact that that Dave Brocky as Odorous teamed up with PETA for an anti-fur video and an anti-dog fighting video, and it's kind of interesting to see a guy whose character is so brutal, brutal and violent. Clearly, that guy had a soft side. Can you actually tell me about the soft side that we never get to see?
He was definitely just a sweetheart. It's a lot of what Gwar was in those early days was a reaction of a sensitive person to all this nastiness in the world. Let's face it, there's a lot of nastiness out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
we saw it for the last, Americans saw it, well, the world did, but Americans experienced it, firsthand for 4 years. And they're, just today, they're reliving, the culmination of that with that trial of Trump's impeachment. There's a bunch of, I personally think, that whole Trumpism and QAnon is the most dangerous mass hysteria since the Middle Ages, since the Inquisition. And, it's brainwashing middle Americans into thinking, that alternative facts are facts, which are not. And, but back to Dave, he was a softie. He was genuinely a nice guy. He partied hard, partied too hard in the end. But he just loved people, and that really was reflected in the tributes that came out to him after he passed. I mean, people were saying, "Oh, I saw him in Seattle, and afterwards he came and he met my son and gave my son, a souvenir." And he was a really caring individual. And I guess like any artist, the more sensitive someone is, and the more good they are, the more they are offended by the bad. So that was, part of the demons torturing him was, the world was a heavy weight on him, and the way the world, I guess it is on all of us, really. Some of us express it more, and some of us try and escape from it more, that kind of thing. But no, he was a softie. Yeah.
That's not something you usually picture when thinking about the Gwar guy. I just want somebody to hold me at night and whisper sweet nothings in my ears. Yeah, no, a really, really cool character. And I always thought there was a lot more, I always thought there was a lot more of an intellectual approach to the nonsense he would project, for sure.
He was pretty sharp. He wrote he wrote one book about demons in the World War II, He
Mm.
was really well studied with history, and he had a fascination about Stalingrad and World War II and all of that stuff. But he told me the last time I saw him in Australia, he
Yeah.
was working on his next book was going to be about Edward Teach Blackbeard,
Okay.
and he started the research, and I was sending him stuff because, and that really touched me because when I grew up in the Bahamas, literally me and my mates after band practice would go hang out in Blackbeard's lookout tower, which was still standing there, as a turret, a little ruin on the hill. And it was about a block from my house was Blackbeard's actual lookout tower where he would, keep an eye out for either other pirates or the government, because Blackbeard actually took over Nassau, Bahamas from the British government for about 8 or 9 years. And that series Black Sails is great, but it's not filmed in Nassau. But it's kind of
I gotta check that out, man. I keep forgetting that Blackbeard's kind of like a real guy because I
yeah,
was
he
like,
was. No, he's a
yeah,
real guy, and he was a real kind of scary guy, but who was a real guy. So I think Dave identified with him. I mean, Blackbeard had that huge beard, and he would tie tie fireworks into his beard and stuff to attack boats. And he ran like War. He ran a ship with a bunch of fools on it, and of outcasts and stuff. And
Nick saying Blackbeard is real, and I'm like, I think I'm in the same boat where I was like, I always thought he was like Long John Silver, and
he was real, and he was caught in Virginia near where I ended up going to university. The governor of Virginia put out a bounty on him, and they caught him at Ocracoke Island, and they ended up hanging, put him on the gallows and hung him. But I think I don't know how long his career was, but it's like 20 years of ruling the seas, and stuff. And yeah, he was a real guy. And the reason they hung out in the Bahamas in Nassau is very shallow waters there, and their pirate ships knew how to sail around the reefs, or had lesser draw than the man of wars from the British Navy. So he could get into these little islands and hide out and stuff. And one of my mates had a house right down where he careened his ship, which is where you resupply it and stuff like that. But he was the governor of Nassau, self-proclaimed governor of Nassau, and took over the big British fort there, Fort Charlotte, and hung out. So hopefully, Dave's dream of a book about Blackbeard comes true someday. If I ever retire and it's not done yet, I'll take the task on and try and assume my best Dave mindset, because more than likely it would be a twisted book about Blackbeard. So, because that's the way Dave was. Dave had a twisted sense of humor. There's no doubt about it.
oh man, the reaction we're getting based on the pirates is crazy. This interview kind of reminds me of that scene in Wayne's World when they meet Alice Cooper, and they're just
Yeah.
like, so come to Milwaukee often. Well, actually, people have been calling it Milwaukee, which means the Great Land. Yeah, and people have been coming here retreating since the 1800s. That's right, Pete. And it's kind of funny how it's just like sometimes this is the type of everybody out there. This is the type of conversations we have late at night after shows at parties. It's not like, hey, dude, what bands are you into? It's like, no, we know what bands you're into. We've been hearing ska all night. Let's talk about anything but this. And
let's talk about weird. Let's talk about weird stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's cool.
Vincenzo, very talented director. Nappy is saying, quoting the Beatles, "Blackbird singing in the dead of night." Yeah,
Blackbeard.
yeah. Hey, by the way, you were bringing up the Beatles. Let's have some fun. This is exactly the type of stuff that we would talk about at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
After jet lagged. Who is your favorite Beatle? You said you like to Beatle.
of course, when John got shot, he became my favorite Beatle. But before then, it was George, without a
Okay.
doubt. Yeah, and that was because maybe because he was the underdog. Uh, he was the best guitar player. You know, I don't know. I just early on, that was when the Beatles first came out, and everybody said, "Who's your favorite Beatle?" That was just who I identified with. I did. The only one I've ever seen in real life was Ringo, because he came to the Bahamas, and one of my old girlfriend's father was his financial manager. So,
Wow.
so I saw him pull up his boat to the dock. He had this big, bright red racing boat. Pull it up and dock and walk up to their house. I didn't talk to him or anything, but yeah, Ringo was the funniest. Paul was the most prolific. John was the most poignant, but George was my favorite. Yeah.
I like George too, especially like when you see the Beatles anthology, he kind of like had this kind of sarcastic. You could tell he was linked with Monty Python, you know.
Oh yeah, they were, and
Mm,
you know, I guess because he was the underdog in there, he didn't quite ever have to deal. I mean, he's famous as
yeah.
can be, but he didn't have to quite deal with as much as McCartney and Lennon did. Um, you know,
Well, someone did
he
break
went.
into his house once, though. I mean, like he
Oh, they
wasn't
did. I
completely,
remember that.
yeah,
Yeah,
wasn't
and
completely safe.
there's a whole Layla story with that being about Clapton lusting after his wife, or vice versa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but he went through his spiritual phase too. That all things must pass, and
Mm.
um, although I think he was the one that told. It might have been John, but it might have been George that told the Swami that they were following in India to fuck off, and got out of there because he was molesting the girls there or something like that. Oh, that's what Sexy Sadie's about. Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
never knew that until recently. Yeah, so
Wow.
no, it might have been John that got pissed off at him at
Did
the
not
Swami.
know that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Something fascinating about the Beatles too, you're mentioning with George, is that like Paul, Paul was the
right.
instrumentalist, like pop guy that wanted everything to be in perfect precision and perfect tune and layers and production and all that. Like you
Right.
said, very prolific, pictured pictured everything very big. But then John was the guy who was like, you know, the most punk rock of the entire band,
Yeah,
like that
and
wanted raw, real
emotion. Yeah,
emotion. Yeah, yeah. Even if it's Yoko like yodeling or like
yeah,
someone burping into a microphone, as long as it's real, that's the way John wanted it. And the two of them together, and an uncle of mine told me this when I was like a teenager, and I actually impressed Fat Mike from NoFX the only time I ever talked about it, because I
yeah.
pulled this out of my sandbox of my uncle explaining the Beatles properly to me. So when I was a stupid 23-year-old, I could actually have the right conversation. Is that like Paul was so pop, but and John was so out there that together, that's actually the true genius of the Beatles
They
was
balance.
was the
They
team,
balance.
the
Yeah,
balance, and that's
yeah,
why afterwards, like Wonderful Christmas Time can exist from Paul McCartney, and
right.
you know, it's together. That's what made this. What people don't understand is like how powerful the individuals were when they came together. They assembled a fucking megazord of musical talent that
Yeah,
needed each other to be there. And that's why I don't really like the White Album that much, to be honest, because clearly it was everybody going into their own camps, and that
yeah.
collaboration you saw in Rubber Soul was gone.
There's
So
gems on there, but it's my least favorite. You know,
yeah,
really, I'm, you know, uh, everything up through everything up through Abbey Road, I guess. Um, Sergeant Pepper's, but Rubber Soul was the one that really got me. That was the one.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, there were hits before that, but there's not a song on Rubber Soul that I don't love. Yeah,
um,
and
Yeah.
And that was the stuff I was trying to learn how to play in the beginning too, you know, and it was a little more accessible. Yeah.
Nick Caruso's bringing up Revolver. Anyone? Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
that was their best years before Paul allegedly died.
Yeah. I wonder how that would work with conspiracy theorists this day. God, they'd be all over that, you know.
I love me some
they
conspiracy theories, man.
they think that JFK Jr. has come back to life and is wearing a Biden rubber mask right now and really ruling the U.S. They would, you know. But I do remember taking the Beatles records and turning them backwards and listening to them.
And ruining them in the process.
Actually, on one of the ones I'm working on now, I have a backwards one, but I won't tell anybody what it is. I'll make you ruin your stylist trying to figure it out. But I just put that in there just recently. It's a good one too. It doesn't say Francis is dead or anything like that.
I didn't actually. I forgot to say though that in the Beatles' last true record, I know Get Back is technically the last record, but only because it came out afterwards. But really, Abbey Road is the last one, and in Abbey Road, that's when George became our guy because I love George too.
He was shining on that.
Shining. So when all the other guys were off in their own camps doing their stuff, like this guy steps up and like, here comes the sun, something in the way she moves. These are bangers, man. These are awesome.
Amazing.
You know,
and,
yeah.
Oh, what was I just thinking about? Never mind. Yeah, I think that was awesome too. Oh, I know what I was going to say is there's that new movie coming from the guy that did Lord of the Rings and stuff. Is doing
Peter Jackson. He's doing a Beatles documentary on Disney Plus, isn't he?
Right, and it's featuring that Get Back era, right? I think.
Okay, yeah, that's really
what
cool.
I heard. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah.
Oh, Francis. Hey, Francis, how you doing, buddy?
Is Francis there?
Well, Francis is so tall that I'm actually high-fiving him right now. He says the hotel we stayed in Montreal, Ryan came and hung out, and that's true, man. It's been a long time. In fact, I spent many years kind of drunk at all times. So
that hotel on the corner that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Where
St. Catherine.
St. Catherine.
Yeah. St. Catherine.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, but I think Francis said he tried to book a room like the last time, and the guys folded up shop there. So probably sold it and turned it into some bougie kind of neighborhood thing or something.
They have systematically kicked all the hookers out of that area. There used to be so many, and it's not that I was a solicitor or anything, but when I would go down, because we had this local place called Sal the Lex where it was kind of like our CBGBs, but for all age shows. And every time I'd walk by in front of the knockoff Dunkin' Donuts, there'd be like 15 hookers. And then slowly but surely, there was all these condos and all this other stuff, stuff. And that area now is completely different, man. It's like they keep building new shit. So it's very possible that hotel you're talking about was just turned into like a concert venue or a condo. Everything in Montreal is a fucking condo. And here's a little rant. We come back, people from all over who don't come from Montreal buy these condos downtown and then complain about noise.
About the noise.
Yeah.
It happens in Melbourne.
I know.
One of the greatest venues in Melbourne, the Lomond, had a beer garden out there. And they've used that beer garden for great shows, mostly like acoustic bands. So it's not even that loud. With a PA, acoustic bands like bluegrassy kind of stuff or whatever, bluesy. And they've been doing that for, 15 years. And then people move into that area so they're near the culture to be cool and then complain about the culture. And our favorite club to play in down in the alley down the Cherry Bar down in Melbourne, they had the same thing. They had to spend like hundreds of $1,000s on soundproofing because people moved in next to a club.
I don't get it, man. It happened. There's a bar down the street from me, and I played. I didn't live there when I played there. It would have been great. But back in the day, I used to play there, and they used to really, for weeks on end, make sure all the neighbors knew that a concert was going to be happening there. And recently, a friend's bar. I'm friends with the owners of this place called Turbo House, and they had a bunch of trouble with people complaining about noise, and everyone moved above the bar, and they were just kind of like, "Oh yeah, it's noisy," but it's like it's not like they have concerts on Mondays or anything like that either. But now things have kind of gotten in order. I mean, now it's not my business to talk about or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, gee, put two and two together. If you don't like things being noisy, don't move near a club or a bar. And if you do, like, suck it up because you've been told.
Enjoy it, embrace it.
You've been told it was built over an ancient Indian burial ground, and then you are shocked that there are ghosts. Like,
yes, exactly.
yeah.
And there's lots of countryside for people that want it quiet. So they can move out into the Quebecois countryside. Hey, one thing I'm really excited about is I think, and I'm confirming it, I think we can finally get poutine cheese curds in Australia because they were against the law for so long. And I'm thinking about starting a poutine restaurant.
What do you mean against the law? Like, we need to understand this. What?
Because it was unpasteurized.
Oh, I still don't get it. What?
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty stupid law. But like, we also don't have. You can't have sodas with corn syrup here, like in America. Canada, I think, can. You have to have cane sugar here instead of corn syrup. It's just one of those Australian things. But poutine cheese, the cheese curds have come to Australia. Somehow the laws changed, just like we're able to get CBD now as well. But now you can get poutine cheese curds. But I think the only place I found is like a 10-kilo thing of it. I mean, I'm going to get one anyway. Yeah.
That would be really funny if you build a speakeasy specifically to give Australians fries and cheese late at night.
I think I might. I'm working.
And then the cops would show up and be like, "Listen, if you were selling absinthe, and and that would be just fine. But unfortunately, these cheese curds are just, it's too much." Something about Australia, and I'm sure you've lived there long enough now where you can kind of like take away a lot of these stereotypes. But as a bunch of idiot Canadians, 10 and a half years ago in Australia for the first time, we're quite surprised of the lack of shrimp on the Barbie.
That's kind of, for one thing, it would be a prawn, not a shrimp.
I know.
And they're bigger. And I think it just came from, and some people do it, just not in Melbourne as much, like up in, Brisbane or Cairns or, Byron Bay or something. They probably throw more prawns on the Barbie. But I've never heard an Australian use the word shrimp, I don't think.
Also, Foster's is just not a beer you guys drink.
No,
and everywhere in Canada and North America, we were sold a bill of lies.
It is the biggest lie.
Australian for beer.
Australia's got some real crap beers.
Yeah.
And some real good beers. And Foster is neither of them. I don't know where that even came from, but in America we used to buy it too because it came in the big oil cans, And I thought that was an Australian thing, but it is not. We've never seen a Foster's in Australia, have we? No, it's not a thing. Yeah. So no shrimp on the Barbie. No
Foster's.
But we do have animals that will kill you.
Yeah, but there's not Tasmanian devils everywhere, and they don't look like the Warner Brothers cartoon in any.
No, they don't spin around, and they don't have that big jaw. They look like little kind of mangy dogs with lots of teeth showing. and they're not as mean as you think.
But you can get mulga
Yeah.
Alice Springs in your bed.
Which is that, Stace?
You can get mulga snakes in your bed.
Oh, there was
Yeah.
a woman got into her bed in Alice Springs, where Uluru is the big rock in the center of Australia. She got in her bed and felt something scratching her leg and pulled up the covers, and it was a giant snake biting her. Yeah. So I go to bed now. I stomp my feet, and we do have lots of spiders.
That is horrifying.
I don't see our pet spider. We always most Australians rooms have one huntsman spider, which looks kind of like a tarantula, but it's not. It's very nice, and we actually leave them because they eat like other mosquitoes and flies, and we do have lots of flies in Australia.
I've been told another thing about Australia that I just remembered right now is the first time I got there, and I'm not going to insult anybody by trying to mimic their accent. I'm mature now, and back in the day, I couldn't help but trying to do everyone's accent.
Right.
But I've changed my ways. I met the three spirits, and they said don't do that. Something about Australia that really got to me is like they saw me and Francis is like, yeah, you're kind of pale. Put on some sunscreen because we have a hole in our ozone layer and that sun will burn you alive.
That is true, but it's kind of repaired itself somehow.
Really?
I'm not, or it's shifted. It's not as bad as it was when I got here 15 years ago. It's shrunk in size. I don't know if it's a byproduct of global warming that ozone hole is shrunk, but the sun can be severe here, and we do wear hats a little more and do use the sunscreen pretty regularly. It gets pretty hot here. We're on a different, even though we're closer to Antarctica than Gwar ever got. We get our hot days today. What is it today? 20. It's kind of mild today, like 24, 25. But we can get a 40-degree day. But you can get that in Montreal too.
That's true. Hey, speaking of summer and Montreal and Canada, I was under the impression that Australia was always hot. Now we were there in November 1st to be direct. Actually, I believe we arrived in November 2nd.
Yep.
And November 1st or 2nd. I think I was flying through the 1st. And so we're in Melbourne and everything's fine. But then we go to your capital and fucking freeze. It was a great show. It was a great show, very fun. I tried Canadian Club whiskey for the first time in the venue that night because
Canadian Club whiskey was invented by Seagram's for oh no, that's Crown Royal.
Okay.
Crown Royal was invented for the Queen's visit to Canada, but it is a Seagram's whiskey. So you guys don't have Canadian Club in Canada?
We do, but I never thought to myself. And by the way, Stacy's saying, "Hey, Stephanie." Oh, she's talking to hey guys, and Stephanie's saying hello. What's going on, Stephanie?
No, that's our friend Stefan.
Oh, Stefan. I'm reading that wrong. Stefan, not Stephanie at all.
Stefan used to make all the Tim Hortons cups in the factory out in
amazing
Repentigny or somewhere out there.
Yeah. Hassan's on there too.
Oh, Hassan's on there too. Hey, Hassan.
Hey.
Hassan and Stefan are our two best friends, francophone friends there. Stefan has driven the Resignators bus. He actually came to Mexico with us.
Wow.
But he's driven he was our driver on the last tour as well and did merch. And he's just always been supportive of the band. And it was really bad when Francis and I were wrestling Bigwig in the CRW tag team because we would have been his favorites except for Bigwig. I think took precedence, on that one. He was probably booing us and cheering for them. Hassan is one of our great guides to the best poutine in Montreal. He always takes us out and orders way too much poutine for the 10 people that we have along, and we all sit around bloated for the rest of the time. But we also like to discover the great Quebecois beers together.
Rich is on there too.
Yeah. Rich is there, our bass player. Yep.
Great bass playing. Hey, on that new track, Richard. That was fucking.
He's not on that because of
He's
COVID
not?
restrictions.
Ah.
He'll be on the next one.
Well, he's going to be rocking it.
Because we were in lockdown, I ended up having to play that bass myself. But
That's
he
some
will
good-
be.
That's
He
some good
plays it
bass playing,
live.
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be on the next one.
All right.
As long as we don't, we'll see what these lockdown. Like,
Yeah.
We just went into further lockdown today. They take it seriously here. Like when we have 3 cases, they go into lockdown, which is Canada's not too bad, but I know you have more than that happening there. But God,
Canada's a big place, man. A different place with a lot of different mentalities in others. Yeah.
I feel for my mates in America. Like I know hundreds of friends already that have gotten COVID, a few that have died from it, and a lot that have recovered. My son got it in Boulder. You know, he's careful as could be, wearing a mask, and he works in a hotel, and he got it from somebody in that hotel.
Yeah.
And he said it was hell for a week, but he's young and came out of it. Couldn't taste anything for a week or two, and couldn't smell right. He's a bit of pothead. Said the pot didn't taste right, but he came out the other end of it okay, and hasn't had any symptoms since then. But I really worry about my American friends because it's rampant down there, and it's still.
Yeah.
I think they had the numbers go down for the first week ever last week, but it was just a little bit. And that was probably just because they got Trump out of office. I don't know. People starting to wear masks finally. He's so responsible for so many dying just by his stubborn refusal to recommend wearing a mask. I mean, you know, we're not wearing one now because we're at home, but even when we had 0 cases in our town, we wear them when we go out. It's, you know, it's courtesy. It's just like when you were in Japan, you'd see all these people with masks on. They're not wearing masks to keep from getting sick. They're wearing masks because they have a cold or a flu and they don't want to get other people sick. And
I totally get what you're saying there. And someone brought up to me one time, they're like, look, the mask, it's not going to protect you. If anything, it's just about you protecting our people. I'm just like, why wouldn't I want to protect other people? I'm down to protect people. I can't protect them with my arms. You've seen me try to run. It's not going to fucking happen. But I can protect them from my mouth. I could do that.
Yeah.
So we were talking before about fun and Canadian stuff. I just wanted to tell you this story about we were playing your capital. A part of me, I cannot remember what it's called again.
In Canberra.
Canberra.
It is cold. It is cold in Canberra.
Okay. That night, and every free drink on tour, everybody out there, when people can tour again, if you see a person in the band, you're like, hey, good show, and you buy them a drink, that's the best part of their day. Because sometimes, especially in Australia with the exchange rate, woof, I needed
our beers are expensive.
Yeah.
Especially in a bar. It's, people come down here and are pretty shocked at the cost of food and drink, because what we do here is we pay our servers and our bartenders fair wages. So the bars have to charge more for them. And not everything, we make some of our own beer, but most everything is imported into Australia, with the exception of a few things. And there's that cost of bringing it in, the duties, GST taxes and all that stuff. Montreal's not cheap either, though. You know?
No, it's not. But at the same time, let's say if you're coming from the States, all the Americans, when you're allowed back in here, you can come and have a pretty good fucking weekend. You know what I mean? Like with the exchange, because our dollar's so bad. But it's interesting. Another thing about Australia is how fucking large your coins are. Like your pennies could kill a bitch. You could
we don't have pennies.
No, there you go. But you have, or even your dollar coin, like just the smaller it is worth, the larger the cent is, and you can put them all in a sock, in old school style. Like
The 50-cent pieces are the big
Yeah.
ones. They're heaviest. They're the octagonal ones. I don't know if I have one here. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, there's a 50-cent piece.
Yeah, that's a
And
big.
that one, yeah, you fill a sock with those and it's a weapon. But we did away with 1-cent pieces. We got 5s, 10s, and but the good thing about Australian bills is you cannot tear them. You put them through the water, you cannot tear that. No
We got
matter
those
how
now
hard you
too.
try.
We got those now too, but it hasn't been that
Oh, good.
long. Yeah.
I think your money might be made the same place ours is now.
I think so.
It's good when you forget to pull your bills out of your jean and wash them because
It's happened. Hundreds of dollars once was put in the washing machine by accident and was left unscathed. In fact, smelled lovely afterwards. I don't recommend it, everybody. I wouldn't do it on purpose. So that night, like I said, when someone buys you a drink on tour, it's amazing. Someone I think they were kind of not making fun of me, but being like, hey, like, you know, that whole Foster's Australian for beer, like, oh, Canadians must love Canadian Club, and I'm like, the hell is this? and over there in Australia, they sell these great. We do now eventually here too, but they sell rum and Coke already pre-mixed in a can. And the first time I took a sip of it, my eyes welled up because I love me some rum, and I love Coca-Cola. So the fact it was party in my mouth.
What's good is that Canadian Club and Dry, which is ginger ale.
Yeah,
that's better than the Canadian Club and Coke because the Coke's so sweet. The Dry is a little easier to drink more of them. I'm a fan of those, and those we call them pre-mixed. And
what did he have? Like Bundy and rum or something?
Yeah, you must have had a Bundy and Coke, which Bundy is our
Bacardi. I think it was I don't know. It was Canadian Club, and it was the first time I ever drank it. Not sure whatever, and it was in the can. This one, like I said, 11 years ago, and I just was really impressed by it. But later that night, I clearly did not drink enough of that because I woke up about 2:00 in the morning, seeing my breath. It was so cold in the basement we were staying at, and I remember going into my bag, pitch black, and trying to find as many articles of clothing as I could to pull on myself because I went to sleep kind of still buzzed, thinking, I'm going to sleep fine, and then waking up in the fucking Arctic, apparently. It was crazy.
It's still not Quebec cold. It's not like Chicoutimi cold, where literally the first time we played Chicoutimi, which I love, we have a lot of great friends up there. And they usually come, if we don't make it to Chicoutimi, they'll road trip down to Montreal to see us up on the Saguenay. And we played up there with the Dreadnoughts. That was that same tour you saw us with Club Soda. And I remember because the Dreadnoughts had their whole cider thing. So we had all these bottles of cider. Quebecois alcoholic cider. Really good stuff. And I remember it was in a plastic cup. And I took my guitar out and put it in the van, and I put my cup up under the snowdrift there, which was about 6 feet tall. You know? And I went back in and got my amp, and I came back. So we're talking about 15 minutes, and I picked up my cider, and it was almost solid.
I know.
In minutes, and Stace, I remember the back stairs were icy. Stace is wearing fishnets and a skirt and giant boots and trying to maneuver around. And we did see more people on snowmobiles than cars that night, I think, driving along the side of the road. So Canberra can get cold, but not like Quebec cold.
I know, man. I know. Look, it's just like, when you're coming to Canada based on borderline offensive stereotypes depicted in cartoons, you're kind of expecting that. But in Australia, based on borderline stereotypes,
you're expecting outback and sun baking hard and Crocodile Dundee.
And what's crazy about Australia is all you Montrealers out there, the only thing I can think of is kind of like New York versus Los Angeles or Montreal versus Toronto, in which Melbourne and Sydney both are under the
Oh,
impression that they're the best city in Australia, and the other one
without a
sucks.
doubt. There's
Yeah,
a big dichotomy between the two.
yeah.
Melbourne, they make fun of Melbourneites, saying we all wear black, which we do, a lot, you know. And Sydney Siders, what do we make fun of them for? For not having any roads in a straight fucking line. And in Sydney, all the roads just, and the same in Canberra, where you were talking about where the capital is, all the roads are circles. How does that work? But, Melbourne's laid out like Montreal, where you have a grid, and you can find your way around. You turn left, you turn right, kind of like Kyoto. Kyoto's easy to get around. Tokyo's not. They have that in Japan too.
Yeah.
That's even bigger. That's because they fought a civil war and the Tokugawas took over from the emperor and stuff and moved the capital. But
you love history, don't you?
Melbourne, there's no doubt about it. Melbourne has more music and more music venues. That's cut and dry. Sydney Siders are a little more full of themselves, and Melbourneites are a little more alternative, I guess you'd say.
Okay, so Melbourne is definitely the Montreal.
It is a big generalization. We have great shows in Sydney when the venues are up and running and stuff, and we just don't like to drive through it. Just it's not an easy place to get to. Melbourne's built on a bay, so it's just everything's right on one end of it. Sydney's built on this really complicated inlets and harbors, so to get from one place to another, you may have to drive a huge distance. I guess kind of like Nova Scotia would be or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in Montreal, you're on an island, so you're pretty well restricted there and confined, and everything's pretty easy. I never get lost in Montreal. Yeah.
Well, some of the streets are a little dumb when it comes to what's left and what's right and what you're allowed to do. And then you'll find yourself going down a road for about fucking 11 minutes trying to turn right. And it turns out you don't have any options, especially downtown.
And
but
I think they change one-way streets regularly to go the other way. Just to mess with people.
And it's always under construction, always. Even
I love Montreal, though. It's just a beautiful city, and of all the cities we've played, it's in in our very, very, very top of our list. Just the culture there, the unique thing of having the English and the French both, is great, and we like Toronto as well. But we do have more friends in Montreal, I would say.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. I gotta ask you. We gotta run pretty soon. But Australia. You're a man of the world, and you've seen so many things, including being buds with. For those of you coming in late, and if you want to rewatch this later, you just brushing it off. Oh yeah, that time I toured with the Ramones. So anyway. Look at this.
No, I'm not brushing it off. It was pretty special.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But just as you talk about it, I would have been like, so guys, get this. One time I was touring with the Ramones opening band, which is true actually. We did tour this really cool band. Real Deal toured with this really cool band called the Independents, and Joey Ramone was their manager. And it was very cool, not quite ska, but had ska elements and horror type band. Everybody out there, and if you like a good old Static Age Misfit style song, look up the Independents Baby Doll. That is such a
New
cool
York band.
No, they're Southern actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. Very cool. The Independents, and they were called the Independents because when they started the band, they were all so different from each other. They were independent from each other. And I thought it was really cool. But you've been around so long. You've been everywhere, and you've been in Australia so long. And I met so many fucking great people in that first weekend in Australia because of the Ska Nation.
Yeah.
festival, and I have the CD. There's so many really rad bands that people might not know about, but should know about. So besides the Resignators, after tonight, what other bands from Australia
In
do you think?
Australia,
Yeah.
in Australia right now, my favorite punk rock band is Amyl and the Sniffers. I think they're starting to get international acclaim, so you might have heard of them over there. It's just no nonsense. There's a female lead singer who's just super dynamic. Probably the most dynamic female Australian singer since the Divinals. She reminds me a little bit of that kind of school, but they're new and up and coming, and they've toured. I know they've toured the U.S. and Europe. They might have been to Canada already.
Okay.
Amyl, Amyl. Her name's Amy, and the Sniffers, like amyl nitrate, I guess. And it's real no nonsense punk rock and very Australian. Has a slight, you know, the word bogan, right? You learn that while you're here. Has a slight bogan element to it, which is kind of like, you know, there's no real equivalent in any other country. It's not as bad as being a redneck, you know. It's kind of just a working class Aussie, you know. So they got a bit of that happening. They're one of my favorites. Who else up and coming? There haven't been much new music in the last year because the last year, fuck COVID. Ska Nation, the last year time we played, we had a lot of the older generation of ska bands
Really?
reuniting. The Strange Tenants, which were around long before the Resignators, real working class, slightly socialist, communist ska band out of Collingwood in Melbourne. They're worth looking up, but that's an old band. That's not a new band. What else do we have coming out of Australia?
I guess all my references and bands are like bands that possibly could have broken up 8 years ago and I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Porkers got well known from touring over in the U.S. They're from Newcastle, and Pete Porker just put out a Trump song that's getting a lot of airplays. It's kind of one of those silly, what's it called, Big Baby Man. It's just got Trump in a diaper dancing and talks about how stupid he is. But the Porkers are still active, and they're still going.
Melbourne Ska Orchestra, really.
Yeah, the Melbourne Ska Orchestra are a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And that's more traditional, more trad ska, more covers, but some originals, but a huge band. Like we've seen them with the last time they played Ska Nation, this last one, they scaled down to a 16 piece, but they can be like a 24 piece.
Yeah.
And they're mesmerizing live. And Nicky Bamba, the band leader, and all his players. A couple of old Resignators are turn up in the horn section there and stuff.
Cat Empire is always good.
Yeah, Cat Empire, but they've been around for a while, but they're still going.
Are Chris Duke and the Royals still around?
Yeah, they're still happening.
Awesome.
We played with them the last time we played in Sydney, which was with the Mustard Plug tour, right before COVID hit.
Yeah.
Mustard Plug came down. Literally, those guys got out of Australia like a day before everything shut down. And we got to complete our tour, and it was great shows. And when we played Sydney, that other city up there, we played Sydney, as usual. Chris Duke played with us, and another band that we love so much, Nerdlinger. So it's Chris Duke and Nerdlinger. They still play, and they're a great band. They'll do, their Lion King songs and their little Disney tribute and stuff. But we always have a great time playing with them.
Oh yeah,
I can't think of any new ska bands on the scene. Yeah,
Okay.
Uh,
Well, still, I
but
don't know. This is it's so lovely. I've been racking my brain trying to remember this one band name. I don't remember what they sounded like. And we were with
they played Ska Nation.
no, they were on the other side, and we were playing. I think it's fucking funny, man. We play this city, and I'll never forget this. And no one fucking is from there, who's watching this, and no one fucking remembers us. But let me just say, we played this place called Adelaide, and the day
Yeah,
before we played Adelaide, we played Brisbane, and the show in Brisbane. I don't think there was anybody there besides the other band and a few of their friends, and all they could talk about was what a shithole Adelaide was. And then the next day we play Adelaide, and the place is fucking packed, and it was awesome. And we were playing God, what song were we playing? I think we were playing a band. We were playing. Oh, what's that amazing Australian punk band that everybody knows, and it starts with an F? Oh, I'm blanking
Denzel
on
Rom.
Frenzel Rom. We were
Yeah,
playing a Frenzel Rom cover, and we were playing, and the entire crowd was going fucking ballistic. And then for some reason, the lights turned out, and we had it on video. And for some reason, the lights turned out in the venue mid song, and only came back in almost at the end of it. And only through our obscure vision do we see this massive body still going nuts. And real deal. Like every time that happened, we remembered,
yeah.
especially in Australia. But it's just really fucking funny that we were told, oh yeah, Adelaide's gonna suck. Adelaide's gonna suck. And I'm like, I see a
Well,
full
that's
bar full of people ready to fucking rock. This is awesome.
yeah. I don't know. There's a a big kind of rivalry between Melbourne and Sydney, but you take that and move it out further. That's Brisbane and Adelaide. They're as far apart as can get, like mindset and Brisbane's got the tropics on the edge of the tropics, and it's warm all the time, and a little more hippie-ish. And Adelaide has definitely got its own characteristic. We've had the greatest shows in Adelaide and the suckiest shows in Adelaide. We've had the greatest shows in Brisbane and the suckiest shows in Brisbane. So I don't think there's a set rule between those two. There's a yeah. There's a band we play with in Adelaide every time we play. Francis would know the name of them.
What, the Enigma?
Oh, something of Impending Doom or something. And they have a guy who's featured in the band. He's got real long hair.
Okay.
Kind of small fella. He might have played with you guys when
Yeah.
he played there. And he plays only the cowbell.
Prophets of Impending Doom.
Prophets of Impending Doom.
That's them.
And they got
Doom Scar.
They got a little ska, a little bit. They have some horns, a little bit of prog to them, a little bit of prog rock. But the main guy in it never stops wailing on the cowbell.
And his name is Simon Lee.
Simon Lee.
That's lovely.
If you ever need a cowbell player, I know without a doubt the best in the world. He beats Will Ferrell and cowbell.
I was gonna bring that up. That's true.
Yeah. Every time I see him, I think about Will Ferrell because he gets into it. He gets into it more than Will Ferrell does by a long shot. Yeah.
We were playing. we were playing some the ska festival. I believe, given the size of it, and it was pretty large. I believe it was probably in Sydney. I apologize. I remember Melbourne more than anywhere else. And Adelaide, because I don't know what the hell was with it, but that night there was like 100 girls in the audience, and I'm not sure if it was a lesbian bar or something like that. I don't know.
Rare at the ska
Yeah.
show, but
Yeah, I know.
It happens.
I know that was the thing. It's just what the hell is going on.
We played at a small town down on the beach. Warrnambool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got to play there. We played there a couple of years ago, and we were on the stage, and we looked out, and Francis turned to me and went, "Look at the crowd." And I looked out. There was not one girl there. Not one. Not one. It was a complete sausage fest. And I'm thinking, what do the girls here do? Do they not come here to this place? Or Do they not like us? I don't know. But no.
Yeah, the real deal should have called ourselves a sausage party or something because I don't know. No, actually, there's been some really rad. Actually, with ska, especially in Montreal and Canada, like all kidding aside, the crowd is always super diverse and it's
Yeah,
pretty rad.
I've seen that in Canada in general. Yeah, and especially Montreal. You know, whether it was at Club Soda or Petit Campus or wherever, it's always pretty well represented, and that's a good thing. That's always a good thing.
Forgive the accent impression, everybody. I do not claim, but for comedic reasons, I need to say this. I believe it was probably Sydney. I can't really remember, but we were playing this kind of ska festival, and we're just one of the bands that day, and we're like pretty much the most punk, skate punk that has ska elements band there, and we know that. But after it, some guy from one of the bands started chewing me out about not being a real ska band. And it was just funny to me because I'm like, I'm not saying I'm a real ska band. So it's like, I know what you're doing. You're not real ska, are you? I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah, because you're just a pop punk band that has like just skull elements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And
And
I just smile. I go, yes. And I'm like, what am I supposed to say in this?
there's the difference. That would only happen in Sydney, but not in Melbourne.
There you go. I apologize for the shitty accent.
That's no.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't too bad.
You know, I don't ever try to put on an Aussie accent, but when I go back to the States, all my friends, I started saying mates, they're all my mates say, God, you sound so Australian now. I'm like, no, I do not at all.
No, not comparison.
But it's largely vocabulary word choice. Like I never use the word breakfast anymore. It's brekkie. Or I never say tomato, I say tomato, you know. And some of that just sinks in, you know.
Yeah.
Mates are mates, not friends are friends, you know. But hey, it was great. Thank you for having me on the show.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, man.
I think we do have to go back to work for an hour stay.
Yeah.
We run a vape shop and we just got a big shipment in and I got to go down and get it into inventory. But thanks a lot for having me on. It was great to see some friends watching. I'll watch it back and see how stupid I sounded. And
you look great, dude. And Francis brings up, and I didn't want to cut you off right there, but Francis and I actually, I think we have kind of like that common mindset where it's like, don't forget Area 7. And I wanted to bring up Area 7 because Steve-O of Area 7, my very last day in Australia, brought me and the Real Deal guys to he brought us to this like very famous pub that's in your town. And recently Australia just took a hit from the ska scene. Like they lost their drummer.
Yeah, they did. It was a very, very sad day. It was a freak accident. It was a fall, and we really all feel for Area 7. I'm sure, you know, the band will continue, but Dan won't be back there drumming anymore. We did a Resignators Area 7 tour all the way up to Brisbane. Yeah, we did the whole stop all the way up. And Dan was a great guy. He still is a great guy, but he's not around anymore. And that was a huge loss. Chuck, their guitar player, has been in Philadelphia for the last couple of years, but they brought in a guy to fill in for him. But they do have a big show coming up that's going to be a monster. It'll be, hopefully, COVID won't get in the way, but it's with the Living End and 28 Days, a big, I think it's outdoor festival, so it'll probably be able to go ahead. But yeah, that was a huge blow for the ska community. And Area 7, they play just about every ska nation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll persevere and keep going, but that was a sad day. without
Yeah,
a
for
doubt.
sure.
That was only about a month ago, I think, that happened.
Very new, very new. And everybody out there, if you want to hear a great ska Australian band that writes killer fucking songs, Area 7 is definitely
Area
where.
7. Their biggest hit was "Nobody Likes a Bogan," which is we were talking earlier. Bogan in Australia is the working class kind of bloke, and it can be used. It doesn't have to be derogatory, but that's a classic song that gives some good Oh, I just thought of another punk rock band in that vein that is getting some acclaim out there and is worth looking up. The Chats, Chats.
Yeah, someone brought up them.
They're self-proclaimed bogans, and in a good way. And they have a great song called "Smoko," which in Australia, when you take a break at work, you go on smoko.
Okay.
I vape now, so it'd be vapo, but yeah, it's the classic kind of Aussies when they don't want to work anymore, they go on smoko, and take their well-deserved break. Aussies work hard, but they also play hard.
And speaking of working hard, you got to go work hard.
I do.
Well, thank you for going on that last little tangent with me about Area 7 and Dan.
No
because,
worries. I'm glad to mention him. I thought about him and I got sad earlier when we were.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. But they are great guys, and Steve-O is a wonderful man. He definitely. They had a beautiful service down there during COVID time. It was a little hard. But it was kind of a private service for the band members and stuff. And they, I think they did a bit of a pub crawl in his memory and stuff. And yeah, everybody will miss Dan. It's sad when we lose people like that, like Dave Brocky, and losing people to COVID, losing people to just life and death. But we all keep plugging away until we don't anymore, so anyway, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
I hope we get you down here again, so we can put you in pajamas, make you pass out on the floor, and then we're gonna have a huge party around you to wake up to. And
a big thanks to everybody in Australia who gave us were such amazing hosts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks to Nick Caruso for hooking the two of us up. It was his idea.
Thank you, Nick Caruso. Follow CRW
I was
Wrestling.
watching a wrestling match, and he said, "Hey, you should talk to Ryan." I was like, "Hey, I'm going to talk to Ryan right now." And, it didn't take long for us to get it together. Thank you very much. And tune into CRW Wrestling on Facebook, because it's funny as hell to watch. And there's got to be 100 bands involved now. I don't know. I can't keep count of them. And it's great. I got to go watch my match tonight and see that I kicked.
So you win. It's almost like
if I pulled I am the Black Snake, and Stacy Ace and Frankie Thunder from Down Under. I'm trying to get our drummer Nick, because he's truly built like a wrestler. He's got biceps the size of my thighs, and our new drummer Nick Ross, and he would kick ass. He's a short fella.
Yeah.
He would kick ass in the ring, and you don't want to be going up against him in your next match, right? Well, I'll see you in the ring.
I'm sure you're all kicking my ass, man.
Believe me, as soon as airplanes fly again, which will probably be like, fall for you guys.
Yeah.
We're to Canada as fast as we can get, and our first stop's Montreal.
Awesome.
And thanks to all our fans in Montreal for tuning in, Stefan, Hassan, and all the crew. All right, we'll see you later, man.
All right, take it easy, pal. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. So thanks for tuning into the show. That was a lot of fun. Steve's a great guy. Steve Douglas, rock and roll, man. That guy, what a life. So proud to have had that conversation tonight and to bond. And I believe, and I'm really trying to get the cobwebs out of my mind, but it's been 10.5 years. I believe they're called the Steel City All Stars, were also awesome as well. And a funny story, if I get that name right, me and the singer, we were having a few drinks after the show, and every bar we would go to that I would play in, people kept cutting me off because they would look at my eyes, and I naturally look like I'm drunk or high all the time, but that's just the way I look right now, considering tonight I am on coffee in a Frankenstein mug, and that's about it. So each and every night I would have to go and introduce myself to the bouncers at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to say, this is what I look like all the time, guys. So after you see me come off stage dripping with sweat, I'm not actually drunk out of my mind. So please keep giving me alcohol until I can feel it. So yeah, Steel City All Stars. Val is the lead singer. Thank you. Yes. Awesome. Now there's one band I'm trying to remember that lives in Adelaide that I cannot fucking remember, but they were awesome. And a girl singer, and kind of had like a Portishead ska vibe. Just absolutely such a tight, cool band, and showed us a really good time. So can't remember it right now, but thank you very much for watching Ryan Stick Show. We are going to be interviewing more people. If you like the show, if you like the movie The Sandlot, I have and I don't say this in a disparaging way when I say the time limit, because it goes by quickly, but I have a 3-hour interview with the director and writer of the film The Sandlot that I did last week, and it is on this channel. Whether if it's on, it's not on YouTube yet, because YouTube are fuckers and they keep blocking it because of some clips, but Facebook has it, and it's great, and you'll learn so much about it and how it's almost a fairy tale rendition of how he wished his childhood would have gone. It's absolutely amazing. If you've seen the movie Fat Man with Mel Gibson, where he plays like a Santa Claus with a gun, we got an interview with the two directors of that movie that happened a few weeks ago. We also have interviews on this channel with the cast of the Monster Squad. We have Sean and Rudy, and a lot of really good stuff. So if you like what you see and you want to see more of it, I promise it's not all me yakking. It's about really cool guests talking. So I shall see you next time. Same sticky time, same sticky channel. Have high time. Yes, thank you. Oh my God. Thank you, Francis. That has been bugging me for 40 straight minutes. Steve's telling me about something. I'm like, yeah. But at the same time in my head, I'm just like, who the fuck is it? Who the fuck is it? Who the fuck is it? It's called this. Does they sound like Portishead? The singer sings like Portishead. What fucking could it be? High time. Now I can sleep. Now I can sleep and feel better in my soul, knowing that information is uncovered. This is better than finding the Ark. Thank you very much, Francis. I appreciate it. Check out the Resignators on Facebook, YouTube. I don't know if you have Twitter and Instagram, but if you do, I'm following you on it. And yep, support a great band. And we shared a lot of fun war stories tonight, but we also shared some fun war stories about the Resignators, Steve's current band, and highlighted some really great Australian ska punk band that all us Montrealers should know just a bit more about. I believe they also have Ska Nations CD. Well, I have a Ska Nation CD. I should actually play some of the music on it. I know Wes Kingsford, I believe his name is. He had a band called the Something Kings. 11 years is a long time, and I have the memory of a goldfish. So the fact that I remembered this much is actually pretty impressive. So have yourself a great night. And thank you very much, Francis, for helping uncog the cobwebs in my brain. I shall see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.